Well, Sarah, there's been so many tributes to your father over the years, and they bring out always the recurring themes, how kind and generous and loving a man he was, and what a sense of humor he had. And yet he always played the antithesis of that in the movies.
Well, he was the antithesis of the roles he played as a human being, really.
Yeah. That is it. And he always, as Randy mentioned in the play last night, he played the heavy, which equates today to the villain. And that, how do you think, or did he ever speak about how such a gentle man could find within himself to play such villainous roles?
He was starving.
Yeah.
That's how. He was offered the part of Frankenstein, and he was a starving actor. He'd been in Hollywood for 10 years and in repertory theater 10 years before that. So he was offered, he was asked to test for the role after Bela turned it down. And he would have tested for the mailman. He was hungry and delighted to be offered a role. And it was, Frankenstein was his 81st film, and no one had seen the first 80. So he was an overnight success after 20 years in the business. Huge star.
A 20-year overnight success.
Indeed. So that's how he became famous. I mean, it was a pivotal difference in his life, both personally and professionally. And so one of the most often asked questions was, did he mind being typecast? And he said, and meant it truly, that he was lucky to be typecast, and that he would say that corporations spent millions of dollars trying to establish a trademark, and he was lucky enough to be handed one on a silver platter, and it made his career, and it kept him a working actor for the rest of his life. So not all his roles were villainous. I mean, he was on Broadway but he was Mr. Darling.
Mr. Darling? He was Mr. Darling before he was
Darling.
Captain.
And he was, he did over 20 children's records, and all fairy tales. Now, there's an argument to be made that a lot of fairy tales are kind of gruesome, but he did do a lot of radio, children's hours, and, he had a broad-based career, not just playing Frankenstein. And he did some comedic roles on film, on television, on the radio, Information Please. He was very well-read, very well-educated, very articulate man, and a very funny man. So that all came out in other things other than his 3 Frankenstein roles.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you mentioned that he spent the first 20 years of his acting career, having bit parts, and he did a lot of manual labor. And he was very hard-working. What do you think was in him that he didn't give up?
Determination. He knew he had the fire in the belly, which is a theater term, and he knew that that's what he wanted and needed and had to do. He had a passion for his profession, and which he's very lucky. So many people dread going to work, and he loved going to work, even though in the early days it meant getting up at 3 a.m. and sitting in a makeup chair for 4 hours before a 14-hour day of work, and then in 3 hours taking the makeup off. His early days, even once he was a quote-unquote star, were long, arduous days, but he was passionate about his profession. So that in and of itself made him a very, very lucky man, and he was forever grateful for the difference Frankenstein made in his life and in his career, and he was forever grateful for being able to work almost literally up until the day he died.